And God said to Robert Downey Jr., "You finally fulfilled your mission of becoming Tony Stark. Now you're free to do whatever movie you want." And he chose Dr. Dolittle. Yep, as you can see, I honestly I saw Dolittle a few days ago, but I was kind of busy doing some other things. But another reason why I delay a little bit this review is that, how can I say this? Have you ever went to a movie in which you know that what you saw was pretty bad, but somehow you felt like you wanted to talk about it and try to have a little bit of a conflict whether you want to be harsh on the movie or you're gonna be forgiving to the movie? That's how I was. I was speculating about this movie, and whatever you ask me, I will tell you that I'm not very familiar with the Dolittle books. I never read Dr. Dolittle books. And also, I never saw that old movie from many years ago. But I will say that I was actually familiar with the Eddie Murphy movie, mostly because it was kind of like from my time period of the 90s. And I can tell that the Eddie Murphy Dr. Dolittle movie didn't age well. But still, I don't know, there's some kind of soft spot out of me. But now we got this one, the latest movie with Robert Downey Jr. A movie that cost $175 million. And for a movie that comes out in January, this is gonna be a big risk unless it is aiming for an Oscar award. And what do we get? Pretty much a bad movie, but at the same time, I felt like I just came out from probably one of the most entertainingly bad movies I have ever seen. No doubt about it. It's pretty bad, but at least that movie is totally entertaining compared to the other movies that I just saw. Like, The Grudge sucked, and Underwater, actually, it has its merits, despite that being a January movie. And don't get me wrong, I will put Dolittle underwater anytime. Because for a movie that cost $175 million, it didn't feel like $175 million. It felt like a product that it basically just decided, hey, let's make, I hate saying that term, let's make a children's movie. We're gonna do this to entertain your children. I mean, children like animals. They like talking animals. I mean, we watch it on cartoons. Yeah. But you know what? Adults like cartoons too. Some of them. I like cartoons. Pretty much, what did I just saw? Man. In a way, it kind of makes me feel a little bit bad to, for this review, wear this top hat, because I'd rather wear a top hat while making a review of a Professor Layton movie more than a Dr. Dolittle movie. So it is mesmerizingly bad, but I can't lie that it just came out, I'm not gonna lie, entertaining, but credit goes where credit goes, but unfortunately this movie is 75% pretty bad. So, for those who doesn't know, the Dr. Dolittle series is basically a couple of books and movies about a man a man named called Dr. Dolittle, of course. He's a doctor. He goes all around the world, and he has a special gift that he can talk to animals. Pretty much that's it. That's all you have to know. And this version of this movie actually kind of, when you watch it, you'll notice a lot of problems. And it goes with the trailer, of course. When I saw the trailer, I wasn't particularly intrigued, but just by looking, saying at the date January, I was like, okay. But I still have a little bit of my hopes up. I mean, the latest family-friendly British movies that came out in January weren't exactly that bad, if I put it in certain perspective. I mean, the kid, for example, the kid who will be king, that was actually pretty good in its own right. And Peter Rabbit also, I had my skepticism until I was so curious enough to watch it, and then I thought that Peter Rabbit was actually pretty solid. Let's see how they ruin it in the sequel. No, I don't have too much faith in the sequels. But right now we're not talking about either Peter Rabbit or the kid who will be king. I'm mostly talking about Dr. Dolittle, in which basically is another one of those movies in which, kind of like Peter Rabbit, it wants to create kind of like its own new generation movies, in which they're gonna pick up another guy who is probably gonna be the next Dr. Dolittle, in this case a kid, and always gonna come up with a story of a washed out old beloved character and make it, return to work and all this stuff. I already have my issues with new generation movies, but I'm not here to criticize that. I'm more to criticize the movie itself. We start out, of course, with a very, very beautiful animated sequence in which it tells you a little bit of the backstory of Dr. Dolittle. Even though as far as my little research that I do is not part of the books. So, and in the movie, it starts out, telling the story that Dr. Dolittle, he's this guy who has a gift of talking to animals. He goes around the world, he falls in love with a woman, and then, of course, the love of his life, she decides to go on a trip, apparently to find a tree called, I think it was called the Tree of Eden or something like that. And then she goes on a boat and she dies. There's even a storm and everything that in my mind it was like, oh my gosh, she took the same coordinates where the parents of Elsa and Anna died. Because it gave me frozen flashbacks. And because Dr. Dolittle lost his wife, he became depressed. He decided to close up shop where he tended to other animals and everything. So people didn't see him. And then from a magnificent animated opening, then things go downhill from this point because it goes into live action, in which it starts out with this. Kid who he belongs with a family of hunters, but the poor kid can't. He is very apathetic to kids, and no, not to kids, to animals. Oh man, now that I think about it, it sounds weird. Oh, scratch that. The kid is very apathetic to animals. So he can shoot until he accidentally shoots a squirrel with his shotgun, and of course the boy decides to take it to Dr. Dolittle. And here comes a little bit of my problem number one, and let me nitpick this one. I'm not exactly an expert on gun barrel impact or something like that, but I know for sure that probably if a squirrel gets shot by a shotgun, it's not gonna look like he somehow stepped on he just got clobbered by a mallet or something like that. No, the squirrel will have to just explode in smithereens because I know that shotguns have a lot of kickback and firepower. So correct me if I'm wrong. So anyway, yeah, this kid they just goes to Dr. Dolittle's house with the squirrel. We see that Dr. Dolittle really looks like a very washed out Robert Downey Jr. I'm kidding aside. I just kind of wanted to take a snide to Robert Downey Jr. after Marvel's cinematic. But anyway, he's with the animals. He doesn't want to see any human. The movie kind of makes a transition in which the way he speaks to animals, he's like, for example, talks to a gorilla, he talks like, and then the camera zooms in, and then he for the audience sake, we begin to see him talk, in English, and then of course the animals talk. Boy, then the animals talk, in which, you know what, I'll get to that after that, when I get to analyze this movie, because I don't want this review to go very long like I did in other ones. But basically, yeah, they attend the squirrel, but at the same time, the doctor is visited by this girl who, I think she's the daughter of the Queen of England, in which she begins to say that the Queen needs Dr. Dolittle's services because she's dying, and if the Queen dies, the property where Dr. Dolittle lives is gonna be taken away. So he is quote forced or reluctantly goes to see the Queen. He sees her that she is technically being she's sick with a plant named Nightshade, and the only cure apparently is to go to the same place where his wife was going, to go to this tree of life or tree of Eden, whatever you want to call it, and then get the fruit of her so they can cure her. And then turns into an epic quest to find a journal, to find the whereabouts of that island, and of course going to see the island where the tree is. And at the same time, of course, they have to go through a villain played by Michael Sheen, and also there's kind of a little bit of conspiracy and a little of that. That's pretty much the summary of the story. And what I just told you is only the basic of the story. Now it is time for me to talk to you about the pieces that what make this movie, I will probably say, memorably bad. For one thing, the acting goes from decent to what the frick are you doing, guys? I mean, first of all, let's talk about Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Dolittle. Every time he talks, I could barely understand him because he kind of begins to talk in this weird accent that is kind of like a forceful Welsh British accent that he kind of like, I'm talking like this. As you can see, I'm very intelligent and I'm pretty whimsical. But you know what? The other thing that I have problem is that most of the time when he acts, he kind of act like, like he's kind of drunk. He goes like, oh, I can do this. I am eccentric and all that stuff. And I was like, dude, Robert, you're Dr. Dolittle, not Jack Sparrow. He spends the whole movie Jack Sparrowing the whole film. Or if someone, I think people kind of like him also when he makes Sherlock Holmes. But I only saw only one movie of Sherlock Holmes, and I don't think that Sherlock Holmes was kind of like that. That's just me remembering. The kids are fine in their acting. I don't see any problem because I've seen worse. But Michael Sheen as pretty much the primary villain. This guy is basically I don't know. I kind of love Michael Sheen when he kind of plays out this kind of villain because he has this kind of twirly mustache smile that I can't help but to laugh. So yeah, if you thought that Michael Sheen is so laughable in the Twilight Saga, you know when he goes with his thing. You know that whenever you put Michael Sheen in this kind of over-the-top villains, is something that he is perfect. So if there's a plus that I will give it in the insanity of this movie, is Michael Sheen being so awfully villainous, let's say, and is as hammy as ham itself. Oh my god. And now let me kill a little bit two birds in one stone, because one of the things that this movie basically kind of fails a lot is in the portrayal of the animals. The casting of the animals is really bad with pretty much a lot of A-list actors. I mean, from what I can see, there's Emma Thompson, Rami Malek, John Cena, Kumail Nanjiani, Octavia Spencer, Tom Holland. There are a lot of animals that, a lot of these animals where they have, you know, big name actors. But to make a movie like that in which the animals kind of spout out a lot of cringy type dialogue, you can tell that this movie wasn't made for kind of like an audience with a brain. They just only did it just, you know, to entertain your children, because they always think that children will be pretty much distracted by everything they see. And in a way, they're right. They're right. Kids can be easily distracted because they're not tough, you know, to have an attention span. And in a way, that's kind of evil genius mentality. And because most of the dialogue where the animals talk, they're mostly just for jokes or for no reason at all. And this kind of kills off the kind of like the characters in these animals. And for example, let me give you some examples. Like for example, the polar bear and the ostrich, they always bicker around like they're enemies, and then kind of become bros later on. Then there's this dragonfly who kind of complains about his love life, and oh man, he's basically the most annoying of them all. Second place goes to the squirrel that the kid saves, because after the squirrel gets his surgery and is saved, apparently then he gets a kind of like this 1 second flashback that there's even a giant explosion on his head, and because he remembers that the kid accidentally shot him, and he's like, oh, I've been given a second chance for revenge. And then he spends kind of like the whole movie just going around with no reason, and in terms, I kind of, you think that the squirrel will go through the whole journey trying to kill off the kid? He doesn't. He just stands there, and when the kid is in danger, he's like, yeah, die. And then they drop that stick, only for the squirrel to go saying that squirrel lock day 001 and all this stuff. So why did you introduce a a plot, something like a plot line that you wanted to make a running gag, is you're not gonna go through with it. And I mean, every animal is kind of sometimes nerving. They do really have the same talking mannerisms like the animals in the Eddie Murphy Dr. Dolittle. The only animal who actually has a little bit of a dignity on this movie is Emma Thompson as the parrot. What was the name of the parrot? Polly. Because that's the only animal who actually has kind of like the head on the ground. No pun intended, if she's a bird. Basically, yeah, it's the only animal who I could say that is the closest to being dignified. And well, also I will say that the pacing, well, it's not exactly as messy as The Grudge. You can tell that it feels kind of, it feels, you feel lost a lot of times, mostly because the dialogue with this really confusing accent that some of the characters have, and you can't understand what happens, especially since it feels sometimes that the movie wants to make people, kind of makes me think. Okay, I was brainstorming. Okay, here are the correct words. The movie thinks that the whole audience knows of Dr. Dolittle, because the biggest clue that I had is almost when the beginning of the movie, when Dr. Dolittle finds the Michael Sheen character, he kind of begins to say that, oh, I have a history with this guy and all this stuff, and I was like, since when? Look, I haven't given myself the time to read the book, so I'm not familiar with it. This is something that also a little bit the Peter Rabbit story had this problem too, in which it thinks that everybody knows the story. Considering that Dr. Dolittle books are stories that have been written years ago, and so they kind of expect us to, know this. And of course, the other movie is, I don't know where to find it. I'm not sure it is rare, or I didn't give myself the time to watch it. And of course, because we got the Eddie Murphy Dr. Dolittle, which is pretty much the most mainstream of them all, it kind of gets in the way to let us know if this is technically a sequel to the books and all this stuff. You see the disadvantages of, taking a step for a new generation, for a generation that doesn't even know about the past, which also comes in contrast in a scene which involves a tiger, in which the tiger is like, it's been a long time seeing you, Dr. Dolittle. When did that happen? And also and speaking of that, they also have, the character has to go to an island in which the island is kind of ruled by a quote-unquote evil tyrant played by Antonio Banderas, who it is claimed that he is the father of Dr. Dolittle's wife, technically his father-in-law, and I gotta admit that I don't know why, but how Antonio Banderas is dressed and the whole scenario kind of remind me on Cutthroat Island. And the way Antonio Banderas makeup, and I just think that he was kind of like a step close for him screaming, "I love this! I love it!" Kind of like that Cutthroat Island movie. Oh my, but they begin to drop expositions. Let me tell you guys, when it's basically kind of like the first movie of a generation, of a story about many years, and you can't back out your exposition about the history of this character. is then it's not good filmmaking. Filmmaking is actually visual media in which it has to have a little bit of harmony to what we see, to have kind of like an empathy. It's not just, you know, people talking and that's it. Because that mention about the father and that he was against the marriage or something like that is if you want me to believe that, then why it didn't show that, at least on the animated segment, to know that there is some kind of past there. Or again, like the villain, it kind of force feed yourself, you know, to try to read the books in order to understand it. Or if it's not in the book, then this makes things worse. Oh, by the way, I want to also mention about the special effects. The CGI of the animals. They're not very good. Even the first time I saw the trailer, I seen that they're pretty bad. It's kind of like 90s bad, but with a little bit of betterness. Because how could I say? As you can see, now we are replacing a lot of things with CGI, and they think that just because you put CGI and animals in CGI and you make things as realistically as possible is gonna be believable. And so no, the animals looks a little bit too bright. You can really notice that, you know, how the mouth moves. So yeah, it's pretty bad, but for its credit, at least the animals they look at least better than the Lion King from last year. And that's not saying much, because we still need to, you know, dismiss, you know, all, you know, CGI animals, and if you want to make them talk, it feels like a dying art in my perspective. You need to do a little bit better than that. Did I mention again that the animals are they kind of crack out jokes that are not exactly pretty funny? There is a duck who kind of makes a Rush Hour reference. There is an ant who kind of Godfather itself. It's just bickering and bickering. The only joke with the animals that I kind of get as a snicker is a scene in which a fly escapes death from a fly swatter, and he's like, "Oh my god, I survived! I'm the chosen one! I gotta go tell everyone!" He gets eaten by a bird. By the way, did I mention that it's been a while that I haven't talked about the kid? Because the kid is basically irrelevant. The kid is just kind of like a tag-along of Dr. Dolittle, because he self-appoints himself as the doctor's apprentice, because the bird sees that he has potential. He can communicate with the animal. He goes like, he also tries to practice like, Also, to be fair with the kid, I'm pretty sure that he has potential in, you know, in his background. I mean, I like this perspective of, you know, a kid who belongs with a family of hunters, but he's not the kind of kid who feels like going through the mantle of killing animals. He's more passionate about it. In this case, they didn't do much. He just kind of tagged along with Robert Downey Jr. I will say this: at least Robert Downey Jr. treats the kid much better than how he treats Tom Holland as Iron Man and Spider-Man. Jeez. But you know what? I'm I'm not. I want to talk to you something about the climax, but I'm not gonna bother to put spoiler alert on this one because, in a way, it does show you a little bit on the trailer, but it's something that I have to talk about it because the climax takes place on the island, and the island is protected by a dragon. You might be thinking, yeah, you're gonna love this because I love dragons. I exaggerated a lot how much I want to marry a dragon. It's an exaggeration, don't take it seriously. But you can notice there how they try to PG the whole thing. Only one guy dies. Only one guy. It's not Michael Sheen, just in case. You see the duck shitting an egg. And, well, here's the thing. Dr. Dolittle kind of decides to see what is happening with this dragon. He communicates with her. And here's the thing that makes this movie pretty insulting in a way. The dragon is constipated. It feels constipated, and so they decide to have a kind of like this operation in which they have to keep her, in place, and they begin to, fist her buttocks in order to pull out from her ass armor, sword, because she ate all of these things, and even a bagpipe. And guess what? Because it has to do with ass, there's this big windy the fart scene. And to make it mesmerizing, in the trailer where you see Robert Downey Jr. kind of like having this wind, like like somehow he's blown up by something epic or something like that. Guess what? That scene is of Robert Downey Jr. being farted by a dragon. You know what? I came out of this movie kind of forgiving it, but once I said it out loud, you just kind of realize how stupid you were to kind of try to give it a pass on this movie. The reason why this moment kind of never affected me because I have a family member. Who work with these kind of things. Although not professionally, but I've met veterinarians. I know that doctors, they sometimes tend to do things that they're not pleasant, even for animals that have constipations and all these things. And it's a thankless job. I understand that. It's not very pleasant. And I can understand that people will get will say that, oh, why do we need to see that? I understand that people cannot go through with this. But when you think about it, is that when I put it in kind of like in the big picture, if you want to make usually when it kind of feels obligatory that whenever you show a butt, it is always followed by a fart, no matter what. It kind of feels like there is this obligation to do it, in which in this case, it didn't need that. Especially considering that we're talking about a Dr. Dolittle being farted by a dragon. you know what? Let's make this. Let's try to make this close. Um, as you can tell, yes, the whole situation it's solved. They even find out the real villain who actually poisoned the queen. Everybody is happily ever after, and there is a mid-credit scene in which it shows Michael Sheen being attacked by bats. And from that point, he turns into a vampire, and he goes around going, ah! That's the joke I made by myself. So, yeah, I'm beginning to... It took me a while to finally see why this movie is disliked. And you know what? I'll give you all the right to hate this movie. I can see why people hated it. But in my case, yeah, I can see. I hate it. I don't like it much. I like it a little, but I kind of like it in the sense that it's so bad that it's a rich train wreck. Although it's not as mesmerizingly bad as you know what was it, Serenity. It's a movie in which it makes you wonder what the frick happened with this $178 million in budget. You had all of it. You had great actors there, and to bring out this subpar middle of the road / stinker of a movie, that is technically really insulting. And I can understand why people are not beginning to like, talking animal movies, especially when they're made with CGI. In that case, it made me appreciate more the Homeward Bound movie from Disney. Overall, do I recommend this movie? Well, let's put it that way. If you wanna see a terrible movie and want to be mesmerized by all the things that could have been done better, that's a perfect example. That's a perfect example of how to not do a good family-friendly movie, at least for this decade. Next time, Robert Downey Jr., if you're gonna still going on making movies like that, go back to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. At least Iron Man wasn't farted out in the face by a dragon. You know what? I'm a loss of words. How is it possible?